Hi, Blues Matters here. We have Christian Babu of Babu and the Peacemakers, all the way from Colorado. How are you today?
You're doing great. Thanks, Colin. Everything's beautiful day here. Sun is shining. Inspiration in the air.
Excellent. Let's go way, way back. What's the backstory to you wanting to be a musician in the first place?
Wow. I guess it's in my blood. If you want to go way back, my mom is a classical pianist, and I grew up in rural Virginia on the East Coast of the United States. And there was a heavy Piedmont blues influence in
Hmm.
that particular area. So between listening to my mom play piano and being interested in it, she was also a music promoter and would organize concert series in the small town of Winchester, Virginia. And as a result, these artists would come to our house, play their music in our living room. I was introduced to John Jackson at a very early age. And this current project, Babaux and the Peacemakers, is kind of revisiting my roots with Piedmont blues and really a stripped down sound.
Right. And why the guitar? Why the national guitar in particular that you play? When did that all start, and who's your influences?
Well, just many influences, my goodness. I mean, I guess influences of today, include people like Sturgill Simpson and Chris Stapleton and John Prine. I grew up in Virginia, so Danny Gatton
Mhm.
was a very prominent player who was always under the radar, but blew everybody's mind that ever, you know, crossed um, his music, specifically in a live situation. Stevie Ray Vaughan, I remember, you know, going to his concerts and uh, just being taken away by the blues and his style of performing. So that, influentially speaking, there's many different artists, and there
Mhm.
continue to be many different artists for me, specifically in songwriting these days, because like you said, I picked up the resonator guitar, and that was really pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. And I had always had the electric bass be my primary instrument, and found myself playing around the United States in various different outfits as a professional bass player. It really led me into some great territory, musically speaking, with people like Leo Nocentelli, the guitarist of the Meters. I respect immensely, and he taught me a lot about not only songwriting but listening. And
Mhm.
I think that's one of the things that not only Leo but Eric Lindell noticed about my playing. And you know, after befriending Eric and touring a little bit with him, it was great to be able to share one of my songs with him when he was on Alligator Records. And that was called Turning It Out. It was on the Gulf Coast Highway record. And it really got me thinking seriously about songwriting, So that was back in, goodness, 2000. So I really put, a lot of effort into writing, but I was always writing on the bass. And when I
Uh,
picked up this resonator guitar, it changed my songwriting immensely, and I really found the writing fit with my voice, and I wanted to exclaim, from the inside, not only on the guitar but vocally.
and are you a self-taught guitarist, or you get lessons?
Yeah, self-taught for sure. I've had a great time learning others people's music in order to
Mhm.
understand my instrument, actually. And
Mhm.
the wonderful thing about the resonator is the opportunity to have all these different tunings, a lot of open tunings, a lot
Mhm.
of tunings I make up, to fit the song that I'm writing. So yeah, that guitar has changed my ability to write songs differently, but also through self-exploration.
So to begin with, were you being a sideman to other people then, or what?
Yeah, I think that's the way it goes, when you're younger and, you're eager and hungry and want to, be involved. And I mean, heck, give me a gig type of attitude. I was fortunate, being in the area that I live. We had a lot of national touring acts come through town. As a result, my local band at the time had the opportunity to open up and support shows. So as soon as they saw that we were capable and able, they started asking questions and asking if I'd be interested in supporting them as they come through this region. So it was a lot like the old, old blues guys who, just pick up a band wherever they are. And, it saves money.
Yeah.
It's high speed, low drag, so to speak, for the headlining artist. I was just happy to be a part of it. Great example is when I played with Bo Diddley, and that was as I was playing bass. I happened to just fall into that because of timing of his 75th birthday tour and the fact that I was capable and people knew who I was and suggested that I play. So a lot of things just happen if you put the energy out there. And then as soon as people feel like they can depend on you to respect their music and play it in an inspired manner, I think things just start to happen for you as an artist.
Would you say that playing with Bo Diddley was a big break for you, or what do you think?
Certainly adds a little bit of clout to what you do as an artist. It's really hard to get noticed, just period. I mean, there's so many bands, so many artists out there, so many people trying to get the same gig. So any leverage, professionally speaking, that you can offer to anybody that wants to listen, it does change, the perspective of that booking agent or that club owner. And that's really all you're asking for. You're asking for, a foot in the door so you can prove yourself to these people. Once you do, you have to capitalize on it. And, then you form these new relationships, business relationships with these people, and it grows and the word just gets around and, goes from local to regional to state to national and sometimes global.
So you said the backstory of yourself, but how did Babu and the Peacemakers come about? How did the group start?
How did we start? Well, it was really an idea that I had just one day. And, honestly, I don't know where it came from other than I wanted to do this. I felt like I had to work with other musicians with these new songs that I was writing. And, I'm very fortunate to be part of a music community that's vast. I mean, Denver, Colorado is a large city nearby. It's a couple hours away. But because I've been in this area for a while, there's easily 100 musicians I know. And I really thought about it hard because I wanted to be creating with people that also create and produce and write songs, but are masters of their instruments. And as a result, I rallied Neek and Alana Velvis originally as the rhythm section and Eric Martinez as a lead guitar. And together, I presented these tunes to them, and within, I don't know, I think the first record we might have gotten together a couple times. I sent them the demos, and then we really wanted to just go into the studio that raw and that stripped down and see what happened. And when Lucky 13 came out, it did really well on the independent charts, and we knew we had something as chemistry for that. And that was a result of writing songs and being isolated during the pandemic as well. So coming out of the pandemic with that, actually it was still during the pandemic that was released, that first record.
Right.
And that gave us all this a little lift, if you will, because we all had gigs canceled for a year, and we were just anxious to get out there. So having this product to do it made a whole heck of a lot of sense, and it led to an immediate next record that was released Moments in Time 9 months later, and that again was with that group of people. After the release of that record, Meek and Alana moved to New York to start a family together. And I found a couple new musicians out of Denver to do this latest record, Keep Both Hands on the Wheel. And it's just amazing to me as a producer and songwriter how just the slightest difference in character and person can bring a new light into the music. So I really feel like we're continuing on with a great chemistry and really just writing better songs now, which I hope is a trend as an artist. The latest work is the best, and we strive to do that together.
It certainly is. What would you say your style of music is? How would you describe it?
I think I have to go back to my original statement that a lot of the inspiration was to get back to my roots and how my roots were established in rural Virginia with the Piedmont blues. And not that we're Piedmont blues at all. I really feel like it's a mix of a few different genres, more rooted in roots rock, if you had to categorize it. But it has rock and blues elements. I think the blues elements are, really the infrastructure for what we do. And, the roots rock is, I guess, maybe more of an arrangement and songwriting category that we might fall into. But I'm amazed, I get DJs from around the world who spin just blues and love some of the material, and others are just rock, and they're like, this is a really cool, edgy material, and what we like about it is it sounds like you guys. You can try to categorize it and compare it as we do as human beings, which is fine. But I love the idea that people are hearing something honest and something familiar but different at the same time than what they're used to hearing, specifically with today's releases.
And what's been your best advice in your career so far?
My best advice? To other people or to me?
No, that you've had in your career.
The best advice?
Share.
Yes. I think the best advice comes from people with experience. So I love, I could certainly easily turn to my mentors, growing up. And, Leo Nocentelli was a big influence to me as, a musician, but also a person. He taught me to listen. He saw that I had an ability to feel my music and my instrument, and inspired me to continue to try to get the best out of that instrument. I have one thing that rings out in my mind is what Bo Diddley told me. Again, I'm starstruck, sitting in a room with Bo Diddley and all ears, wanting to know the key to, his sound and how he did it. How do you navigate this thing we call the music industry as an independent artist? And, he was a groundbreaker. I mean, what a, inspiring guy, just the idea of, the way he performed, the way he wrote, the way he introduced even, his pedal effects on his guitar. He's really an innovator, right? And he said, Christian, if I can tell you one piece of advice, it's this, and it's that just remain true to yourself with your songwriting and be honest. And it was as simple as that. And as a kid, I had to mull that over. I wasn't, I think I knew what it meant, but I really didn't understand it until later on, because I understood that what he really was talking about was how the vocal connects to your instrument and how that is communicate it to others. And I really found that with the resonator guitar and this current project, Babaux and the Peacemakers. I feel like I can really reach down deep inside and explain what I'm trying to feel in an honest fashion. And as a result, I think people grasp that. They know, people are smart. They know if you're being, pretentious, or if you're being honest and true. And just, as a goal moving forward, that's what, we're trying to do. And I think that comes out with the sound that we have, that people identify with, as a band as well, not just with the songwriting, but the arrangements we choose, the notes we choose to play, how we bend the strings, all those variables. So that was probably, the one that hit home the hardest.
That would take us nicely to talking about the new album, Keep Your Hands on the Wheel. You're talking about writing songs. Do you have any process for writing songs, or can it come from anything? A melody or a riff? Or
Yeah, man, I wish I knew where they came from. I just know they come into my world, and I work very hard to try to keep those channels open. I'm constantly looking for inspiration when I'm walking down the street, while I'm riding my bike, while I'm looking at the horses, whatever it might be, talking to my family. My family's a huge part of my, inspiration. But I think a lot of these things a lot of the songs come with concepts first. Like I'm thinking about, for my wife, or I'm thinking about the love for my child, or I'm wondering why a person said a certain something to me in the way in which they did. I'm constantly combing and listening to my environment, and sometimes it's the wind in the trees and the clouds in the sky, and sometimes it's, something that someone said in a movie that hits home, and it's like, wow, why did that hit home? I write it down and think about it that way. And then sometimes, it's a musical thing. The most important thing to do is keep doing it, and for me, it's, I'm religiously playing my instrument every day, so sometimes I pick it up and, I want to jam around a little bit with maybe some chords that I've been thinking about. And as a result, a melody comes out, and I'm like, hey, that's going to fit really well with that idea I had on my walk about the lyrics, for this tune. I might not know exactly what the title is or whatnot, but, that's a starting ground for me, piecing it together that way. And then, every once in a while you're blessed and you sit down and the lyrics and the music come, and it's 10 minutes and it's done. That's when you get greedy and you're like, oh my goodness, I can do this every day. And it's like, well, you can try, but I don't think every song that we write is necessarily a great one. But I definitely think that writing a song every day is super important to keep that the brain in that mode, to be able to strive to write better songs. Maybe it comes the next day.
Right. Talk about a few of your songs on the album. Steal Your Love in particular. Where did that come from?
Yeah, Steal Your Love. It's funny you asked that one. That was a conscious effort to write an upbeat song.
Right.
I remember actually going into the studio, and I have a lot of down-tempo ideas, and it's fascinating to me to take a down-tempo idea and play around with the speed of it. Does something click, more? And for that song, it did. The lyric and behind the song really has to deal with, my wife playing hard to get. It's like, come on now, I'm going to come in there and I'm going to steal that love. So don't hold out on me. So it's a happy, upbeat song, it's kind of playful and conscious effort to get it there. But, like I mentioned before, it didn't happen to come out that way. It was a much more down-tempo song. And I was like, hey, this is absolutely material for something a little bit more upbeat and playful. And that's how it came around.
And Wildflower, that's a fine tune. I like that one.
Thank you. That one I thought came out really well from the band recording standpoint. Another part of this is that I never know what the band is going to bring to the song. So I usually dwell on these songs solo in my studio right here, and I love it. I love what the band brings. And to this song, man, it was just it felt natural when it was brought to the band. The inspiration behind it is kind of interpreted in a way, from at least from my perspective, that you're really starting things over a lot in life for various different reasons, and I'm using symbolic reference to human situations. And in this case, I happen to be hiking in the Rocky Mountains and, getting my inspiration, like I was telling you before, and looking around and seeing all these wildflowers that just popped up. And I don't know if you've ever been to this area, but it's a very desert mountain area. So anything with color pops out immediately, and you're like, where'd that come from? Because you don't have a lot of it. And it happened to be after a fire came through, and that's devastating to communities. But from a natural progression standpoint, it's very common, and these beautiful things happen after the devastation, like these wildflowers popping through the charred ground. And my excitement for it was like, man, what am I going to do with this thing? This flower. And, truth be told, I mean, the lyrics are saying, should I pick you from the fields of laughter or throw you in the sky after? And it was something that I honestly felt on that hike. I was like, I want to interact with this thing more than just looking at it. This isn't an English garden in my mind. It's a tangible. Let's get into it, right? And I didn't do that, but I started thinking about how that relates to specifically my children growing up in this world that we live in today. And they're constantly regrouping. I mean, it's probably going to be the strongest generation we've ever had. They've been through a pandemic. It's odd. It's atypical. They have strengths that my generation will never know. I have tremendous respect for that. That song, Wildflower, kind of led me in that direction with my thinking behind the lyrics.
And the theme tune, that's a bit up-tempo one?
Yes. Yeah.
Where was that from?
The Hardly Living. Is that what?
Hardly Living.
That was Hardly Living, yes. Yeah, that one's one of those songs off the record, Keep Both Hands on the Wheel, that, I wanted to be able to explore slide guitar a little bit. It's kind of more a Delta style in delivery. And, it really started off as this basic tune, just my voice and the resonator. And then as soon as the band got in on it, it felt to me like a little more rock oriented with this blues, heavy blues, infrastructure. The song took a life of its own, but it's kind of a bitter song, to be honest. I mean, not all my songs are happy, and playful, but, thank goodness, we can explore all the different emotions as artists. And that really was, a couple things. And without getting too heavy, I look at people and their attitude towards living and what they're going to do. And I'm very much a go-getter. I wake up and I start I'm happy. I'm happy that I'm alive so I can do something. So I'm going after it. And sometimes when I see other people that are not feeling that way, and in fact quite the opposite, it begins this negative trend of energy, and it coattails and it spirals, and it's hard to get out of, and it has a little bit to do with depression, and how are you going to get out of this place that isn't making you happy and isn't making you click, but at the same time, it's coming from an adult standpoint where you're established. These are patterns that you've been going through your whole life, and to look at it in the face and say, I'm going to change it because I realize that what I'm doing isn't living, to the fullest extent that, I could be. So let's do something about it. It's a decision-making song,
Right.
and it's pre-decision. Let's put it that way.
Right. And the title song as well, Keep Your Hands on the
Yeah.
Wheel. How about that one? Where did that one come from?
Well, funny that one is the title track, right? Keep both hands on the wheel. It's about as obvious, I think, from a standpoint of it's slightly cliche, but it's also reflective of, me as an artist, having this band that pumped out, I thought, 2 great records, and then life changes. And they were going to be following a different path, the rhythm section, the original rhythm section. And at first, quite honestly, it's kind of devastating, as an artist to build something up and then be told that it's not going to continue and you have to figure out a new solution. It's really about that exact moment, because keep both hands on the wheel is really just a reminder to myself saying that, hey, you got this, you can persevere these obstacles, we can really change the way in which we look at that. It doesn't have to be totally devastating in the end. It's a new opportunity and it's a new beginning, and go for it. So it was really a reminder to myself and, ode to, just keeping what we do as songwriters going. People are just going to be around if you're lucky. And if they're not, it's okay. You can find others, and there's like-minded people that enjoy music as much as you do.
Yeah. What about the production process itself?
Of this last record, we branched out a little bit. We went into a studio in Golden, which is a town in Colorado, and the studio is Clubhouse Records. It's owned by Ben Woligoski, who's a really talented guy, excellent steel guitar player, has a wonderful ear. He also has the ability to run a studio very efficiently and has a very comfortable space. So we decided that we would give this a shot. It's very much a live recording to begin with. And, that's really to capture, the rhythm section vibe, and I think knowing that, the entire band is capable of doing this, it really worked out well, because what we did is we captured, that vibe. And Eric on guitar, he's got wonderful ears and, a huge heart too. Like, he pours everything he can into what he does, no matter if it's for Babaux and the Peacemakers or another project, but specifically taken by his studio ability to go in there and, capture the moment, capture the solo, in these rhythm section takes. So it really just provided a great base for me to go back and do vocals on top of it. There were some dobro parts I didn't, perform 100% during the 16-hour studio sessions. I wanted to refresh it. So we did do that. There were a couple guest artists on this record that you'll notice we hadn't done before. We introduced the Hammond B3 organ, which was kind of a nod to my kind of New Orleans funk days with Leo. This specific player, CR Groover, and I toured with Leo. I introduced CR to Leo, and Leo loved him, took him around the world. Extremely talented, gifted player, again, with the heart of gold. And that's an important characteristic in this band, you know. Now, you can be the best musician in the world, but those types don't always have these hearts of gold. And I feel like there's a gold mine here in Colorado of these types of people, and Peacemakers are made up of them. So the production, you know, of the record, was the post-production, I should say, included getting Ben Waligoski on the steel guitar for a couple of songs, Sammy Montoya on the fiddle, which was a new instrument for any of our fans to listen to. And then we had a backup vocal on Hardly Living, the song that you just mentioned. And that was Andrea Ware. And she and I were in a band a few years ago together. Has a very powerful, soulful voice. And these are just production ideas that come into my head after the tracks were captured. So at that point, my go-to for mixing is Joel Geis at a Geis Monster Productions in Los Angeles. He's been with me for, over 14 years doing various different projects with me. And honestly, I think he's one of the key reasons, and that's why he got co-production credits on this record, that we have developed the sound that we have. You know, his ability to keep an open mind, but also take these tracks that are kind of just piled in his lap and, hey, do something with it. But, you know, having me right there being like, you know, this is kind of what we're going for. Can you help us? And he does such a great job. So without that, that's my core team. And then when we master, we have one of the best mastering engineers in the world in Colorado, David Glasser of Airshow Mastering. You know, I got in the studio with him when he was mastering, and he was like, oh yeah, I just got done with, you know, Sturgill Simpson's new record, you know, and I'm here like, wow, you know, Sturgill's, you know, I love Sturgill's stuff. So a very diverse mastering engineer that, again, much like the mixing engineer, has this, it's an art, you know, that they've mastered. And the sound that we were going for in the very beginning is there because of them.
Feel now that it's released.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's like giving birth, I suppose, to some extent, right? You know, it's kind of mixed emotion is what it is, because, you know, you've been working, you know, this particular record, I was working on it, you know, a year before it was recorded, listened to it 500,000 times, I'm sure. And then when you're mixing, you know, my go-to is put on my headphones, get it on my device, and I head up into the mountains and I hike, and I'm listening to the music really closely while I'm looking at my feet stepping in this environment. So it's this interesting rhythm that I partake in to be able to give some guidance to those who are helping on the mixes. And it's a lot. I mean, we're listening to this stuff a lot. So when the record finally comes out, it's kind of like, well, all right. And, you know, half the time I find myself halfway into my next record, you know, by that point. And, you know, my mind goes to that next record and I'm like, oh, hold on. Yeah. We have to support this thing. We got to get it out there. We got to have a radio campaign. We got to go tour a little bit. And so that is a lot of mixed emotions, but what a blessing to be able to release a record that, you know, coordinated efforts with multiple different people, schedules, all the functional stuff you don't think about, you know, that you have to do to get it done. You know, just the drive of the people that are on your team is so important, you know, and that just, to me, is inspiring to just keep doing it, you know, as long as you can, you know. So that's basically what I'm doing on this earth right now.
And have you road tested any of the songs?
Live? Oh, yeah. Yeah, actually, you know, we were performing some of these live before it was released to see what the reaction would be.
Right.
You know, and we actually, you know, we use that as a tool for arrangements. And, you know, some of them were spot on and some were like, maybe this could work better, or that could work better. And by the time we got to the end, we had some of that under our belt. So, yes, I perform regularly, solo and duo, so that I can do exactly that. Feel out the song, make sure that that is something I want to present to the band, even. And then once the band gets a hold of it, then it takes on a new life. And yes, we get it out there together. We're really excited. We got a show coming up in Denver on the 16th of November at the Oriental Theater. Beautiful historic theater in Denver. And we're going to be playing the record for the most part in its entirety that night, and add a few other songs, and a few other guests are going to join us as well. So we're very excited about that.
Oh, that sounds good. Sounds good. And have you any other plans in touring?
Yes, absolutely. We just, as you know, we were signed by Guitar One Records. They're really helping us out with promo, which is great. And then recently we also signed with a booking agent for exclusive festivals in the Colorado area for 2026. So, for those of you that don't know, you need to get yourself out there a good year ahead of time, 6 months ahead of time for booking quality gigs. And that's what, we're shooting for now. And in the interim, we'll be doing shows around Colorado to support the new record. And hopefully these festivals in Colorado and elsewhere are going to come into fruition, and we'll set up a tour as a result of that. That's the campaign we're in right now, that we're looking towards really spring of 2026 to hit it a lot harder in a live arena.
And what does blues mean to you?
Healing, man. Blues has always been healing for me. It comes, I think, for the most part, most people have that in them. Certain blue, if you will. And for me, it's really been something that I depend on from a standpoint of healing, because life isn't easy. There is a lot of negative noise around us at all times. And to be able to filter it out and to be able to focus on how you're going to navigate your path through life and heal, the blues offers that to me.
Yeah. And what about the hopes and fears of the new album? What is
the hopes of the new record? I hope it keeps the momentum that it has gained already. We released it, I can't even remember when we released it, a few weeks ago. In the United States, it hit #1 on the indie charts, which is great. We're still involved with those charts. The other records are, lasted years on those charts, which just is amazing to me, because that means that people are listening, people are wanting to spin the music, and that ultimately is what we want. We want people to listen to it and be inspired, hopefully, by it as well. We hope that continues, but that's not the only important part. I really feel like, we have something strong to share from the live arena with this record and the others. The repertoire is built so that we are ready to go. I mean, we could play a 4-hour show, or we could play a 45-minute set, for, established artists at this point. So we just hope that there's more opportunities that are going to be, given to us as a result of what people are listening to on this record.
In the future, you're already writing another album, obviously.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that last night. I'm kind of down here in my studio. It's in the basement of my house, and I have about a dozen songs. I don't know that they're all ready. They're in some fashion, and some form and fashion right now that I don't even know how it's going to end up, but the inspiration is there. So while it's there, I've been capturing that, and I'll come down in the studio and record daily, and improve on the initial idea. At least I think it's improving, or at least it feels better, because if it feels good, then it feels good, and that's where it should be. If it doesn't feel good, I don't want to beat a dead horse, so to speak, but at the same time, I'm challenged by why it doesn't feel good. And I get immersed into that. So that's an ongoing process. And yes, if I'm lucky, I'll be able to present a group of songs to the Peacemakers, and we'll have another record on tap here. But for now, we're gonna push this latest release, keep both hands on the wheel. Hopefully, get out there. Now you festival people, you give us a call. You can reach us at babaux.com and let us know, because we're there. We're ready.
Yeah. Well, that sounds a good place to stop. Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you, Colin.